Yeah, well, I did some wacky stuff in the FBI. I was the head of all of our negotiation response to kidnapping of Americans anywhere in the world internationally. Your limbic system doesn't know the difference between being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or being yelled at by an angry customer or a spouse or a colleague who's unhappy. Your limbic system reacts the same.
So when I read this book, it was a game changer for me. I was doing it all wrong. And when I started to build rapport and relationships with these people, like the whole world changed.
I heard a stat the other day, and the people that you're serving, if the stat serves me correctly, creates 85% of the employment in the United States.
Yep.
Not the corporation. I'm doing the interviews with you for the TV show. I'll fly you over my private plane. You want to go? Yeah. I ain't turning that baby down.
Yeah.
And we sit down and we get there, and he says, "You're the reason I can afford to fly private now wherever I go." We got a very coachable family mentor on the team who takes our coaching and then comes up with a couple of questions within that framework on his own, which totally throws the kidnapper off. Now, we don't know we got a murderer, we got a serial killer on the other end of the line. And through the how and what questions that we're coaching this guy on his own, he says to the kidnapper,
A very warm welcome to the Creative Dealmaker Podcast. I'm Carl Allen, I'm your host, and I'm going to be interviewing expert guests sharing investor strategies that will completely and utterly disrupt the market when it comes to buying and selling businesses all over the world.
Hey guys, Carl Allen. Welcome back to another edition of the Dealmaker Podcast. This is a very profound moment for me because today I get to interview one of my big heroes. So a very, very warm welcome to my special guest, Chris Voss. Quick introduction on Chris. I'm sure you all know who Chris Voss is. I talk about him enough. He's the former head hostage negotiator inside the FBI. He retired in 2007, and he founded the Black Swan Group, which is the world's gold standard for negotiation training for business and individuals. And he's also the author of one of my favorite business books of all time. I've got it with me. Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as if your life depended on it. So, Chris, a very, very warm welcome to the Creative Dealmaker Podcast.
"Thank you, Carl. Happy to be here. Thanks for making the time for me."
No, you too. I really appreciate you. I know you're very, very busy. You're doing loads of really cool things. But my viewers are like, Carl, if you can get Chris Voss on your show, it's going to be amazing. I've just given a little quick intro about you there, but let's kind of drill into it. Do you want to give us a little bit more kind of insight as to the things you were doing in the FBI, and then that kind of big transition into the new paradigm of you teaching business owners and individuals all over the world about how to really truly negotiate?
Yeah, well, I did some wacky stuff in the FBI. I was the head of all of our negotiation response to kidnapping of Americans anywhere in the world internationally. So a kidnapping is you're the buyer. It's buy-side negotiations. And when like a contained siege, like I was at the Chase Manhattan Bank, is sell side. A guy calling into a bank, hostage negotiator calling in. That's a cold call. What's a cold call? When you call somebody on a phone and they don't particularly want to talk to you. And that's exactly, that's the guy inside the bank. He hears the phone
Yeah.
rings and he's like, "Yeah, I don't know who's on the line. I just don't want to talk to him." But buy side negotiations, a little bit different game. And I disrupted it by bringing empathy in. Like I had heavy duty training on a crisis hotline in New York City, in this thing that we called empathy, which is emotional intelligence, not sympathy, it's not compassion. It's emotional intelligence. It's applied emotional intelligence. It catches people off guard. It's invisible. So I got a heavy duty background in it, and I know it worked from the suicide hotline, which almost no hostage negotiator has hotline experience. They should, but they don't. There are lots of shoulds in the world. As a friend of mine has often said, it's a shouldy world. So I'm doing these bare knuckle bargaining things and using empathy, and it's just catching these bad guys off guard.
Yeah.
Like they don't know what to do. It's hitting them in a subconscious, literally a subconscious level, and it's changing their outlook. And it's the equivalent of me being Dumbledore and waving a magic wand at 'em. You know,
Yeah.
they just don't know what's happening.
Hey, it's Carl Allen. I'm so glad that you're here and you're watching my podcast here on YouTube. And I wanted to offer you a special gift to say thank you. So please go to learnfromcarl.com. That's learnfromcarl.com. And I have a free comprehensive training on how to buy an existing cash loan business waiting for you at that link. And it's free. And I'd love to meet you one day. So please reach out and maybe I can mentor you. Until then, bye for now.
And you come to learn since I left the Bureau, and even in the last few years I was there, that this is about human interaction.
Yeah.
Humans, under any circumstances, make their decisions the same way. Everybody listening to this, your limbic system that you inherited from the caveman, your limbic system doesn't know the difference between being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or being yelled at by an angry customer or a spouse or a colleague who's unhappy. Your limbic system reacts the same. You know, I'm listening to Musk give an interview, Elon Musk. I love his interviews. You know, you could you get him in a bad moment and you let him talk for 15 seconds and he's saying like, screw you, Bob Iger at a conference. But give him some time to talk. And what he was saying the other day when they were talking on who's my buddy, Lex Friedman's podcast. He said, you know, you're the CEO of your brain, your prefrontal cortex spends all its time trying to keep the amygdala happy, the limbic system happy. And he's outlining what they're doing in Neuralink and how they're making it work for the brain. And he's giving me all this stuff that I know to be true in hostage negotiation. So I learned how to make the limbic system happy in hostage negotiation. As it turns out, it applies to everything that we do throughout our day.
Your whole life's a negotiation at the end of the day. You're in negotiations really every hour of every day, aren't you?
Anytime I want or I need is in your mind. I want directions. I need some information from you. I would like you to collaborate with me on this project. Again, Musk said the other day, the ultimate commodity is time. You're negotiating over time. Collaboration is about time, and it's about, yeah, I could beat you into it, a la Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But you're not going to execute.
No.
You know, you're not going to like it, beat into it. You're gonna want me to talk to you the way Warren Buffett does, or the way Oprah does. Like you're going to want to collaborate forever because you feel like you were treated generously. And this generosity feeling is an accelerator to deals.
I know, and it's like one of the things that, like, when I first started reading about your stuff, like one of the thing that really kind of hit me between the eyes is I'd always known that rapport was a massive part of business negotiation, because I grew up as a Wall Street negotiator where you're trained more in that kind of hostile environment. You know, it's like, you know, who's got the biggest ego, who's got the biggest temper. But when I transitioned 15 years ago to buying smaller businesses, $2 to $10 million businesses, you're dealing with those humans. And what I realized, the first few deals I tried to close, I couldn't close those deals because I'd not reached the seller on that tactical empathy level. So when I read this book, it was a game changer for me. I was doing it all wrong. And when I started to build rapport and relationships with these people, like, the whole world changed. It really was fascinating. But what's your, like, when you came out of the FBI, did you know that you were going to get into this at a business level and create such a wonderful company in Black Swan, or did it happen to you after the fact?
Well, it's evolved in ways I didn't expect.
Right.
Like, first of all, I thought basically we'd give training and people would be like, wow, this works. I need to learn it. I need to get better at it. And I think I originally envisioned corporate training to be mostly corporate. And I didn't think we were going to coach. We're constantly coaching. Like, I was coaching somebody in very, very high dollar acquisitions just before I came on a podcast. So we're coaching way more than I ever thought we would. And we're really coaching the entrepreneurial mindset, the ambitious versus the competitive. They're very competitive in corporations.
Yeah.
And a competitive guy is different than the ambitious guy. Now, I got some competition in me. Like I'm more ambitious, but I check the book ranking every day. And I check to see who's in front of me, who's behind me, and how far they are behind me. And anytime anybody's in front of me in any way, I'm like, damn it, damn those guys.
Yeah. Let's get back.
So I got competitive in me too. But the ambitious is by definition innovative.
Yeah.
And it's the entrepreneurial mindset, the true entrepreneur. When we first did the masterclass, and I'm blessed with my partnership with Masterclass, and that it's still their best-selling course.
It's incredible. We'll talk about that in a minute, but yeah, keep going. This is fascinating.
Well, in the early days of talking with Masterclass, David Rogier, their founder, great guy, love David. He was telling me that their client is a curious, ambitious 30-something, the cat. And this is during the pandemic. So I'm like, ooh. And I look up ambitious as a characteristic, as a trait. And it's by definition innovative. Patrick Mahomes is ambitious. He's throwing behind his back. He's throwing underhand. He's throwing sidearm. And Kirk Cousins is competitive. Kirk Cousins is perfecting that throwing motion. And Kirk Cousins will pretty regularly get you into the playoffs, and Kirk Cousins is making a lot of money. Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, the ambitious and competitive, but more ambitious, he's racking up championship after championship.
Yeah.
He's getting you into the Super Bowl. And that's why the transition from being competitive to ambitious is a tough one.
Yeah.
Because, you want to get Kirk Cousins like, hey, throw behind your back. He's like, I ain't doing that. I'm perfecting what I want to do. And then also I would wager that Patrick Mahomes is happier than Kirk Cousins is too. Patrick Mahomes having fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Kirk Cousins is torturing himself.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between being ambitious and competitive? And the ambitious are mostly in the size companies you're talking about.
Yeah.
I heard a stat the other day, and the people that you're serving, if the stat serves me correctly, creates 85% of the employment in the United States.
Yep.
Not the corporations. So the real force for good through prosperity is through the entrepreneur, the ambitious entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, one of the things that really fascinates me about what you do is you're obviously the best in the world at your craft, but you've gone from like doing it in the most difficult of situations where someone's life literally depends on your abilities that day, down to kind of just the normal world of buying companies, selling companies, negotiating deals. I've even used a lot of the things that I've learned from you in the book and also on the masterclass with my own family. Like, how hard you'll know this from having children. How hard it is to get a 16-year-old boy to do stuff. It's by labeling and mirroring and doing all these different things. Like they think I'm like this Jedi with all these mind tricks. I'm like, no, I just read the book. Like, but like you must get that a lot. That because you mastered your craft in arguably one of the toughest things in the world. It must be, is it a relief to bring that down to like normal life and business? Like, how does that work?
Well, probably the overall strain isn't exactly the same. You get it when you're doing hostage negotiation, you get it into it a little bit at a time. It's like that boiling water analogy with a frog, which I don't know whether that's true, but it's a great analogy. You just turn the temperature up little by little and the frog can handle it. Whereas if you drop them in immediately, it'd be too much. But what I always loved about it was I always felt like I was pioneering.
Yeah.
And it was always a privilege. And today with business people, because I'm convinced that the world's problems are not going to be solved by governments, they're going to be solved by the private sector.
Yeah.
And so with business people, and we're still pioneering, we're still perfecting it. Like I came to a realization in coaching a client the other day. of how to express something that I'd never expressed previously. Like Derek Gaunt and I, principally Derek and I, and we get some other superstar coaches on the team also, Troy, Sandy, Don. But we're perfecting still. We're still learning.
Yeah.
And it's because we're in an American environment by definition. Well, however it happened, America is still the center of entrepreneurism globally.
That's why I moved here permanently. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So there's something creative, innovative, ambitious in the air in the United States that hasn't quite been captured anywhere else.
No, I totally agree with that. I moved my family over from England. We lived in the beautiful, idyllic countryside, and we decided to move to the States. I let my family pick the city. They picked Austin. So we're here in Texas, which is really good. But you said something there that I really want to kind of drill into because it's really, really profound what you said. You talked about that yourself, despite being the best in the world at what you do, you're continuing to learn and you're continuing to innovate. And I have that same mantra with me. Well, I've been a business buyer for 33 years. I coach 32,000 people all over the world. And I tell them every day that I'm always learning about new ways to buy businesses because I'm not just a coach, I'm a business buyer as well. And they don't believe me when I say that. They say, well, surely you know everything there is to ever know about this stuff. I'm like, no. I was on a call literally an hour ago. I'm trying to structure this deal with the seller, and I was labeling and mirroring. And I always have I'll never have a call to negotiate a deal. I always want to do face to face because I want to read the body language and I want to look at their face expressions when I'm talking to them. But I think it's what drives people like you and I, that we know that even though we're the best in the world, there's always more to learn. There's always things to experience.
Yeah, amen. I mean, there's novelty. I think I heard Tony Robbins say a long time ago, we want consistency and we want novelty.
Yeah.
Which seem to be in contradiction, but yeah, the novelty, the continuing complexity of how much more you can dive into it and be fascinated by it, and do that flathead moment. My buddy Tom McCabe said, I like people with flat heads. That when they finally see something, they go like, "Oh my God, how did I miss that?"
Yeah. So, a couple of things I want to talk to you about. So, I want to have a little bit of fun if we can. Can you walk me through, there might be some stuff you can't share, but at a high level, tell me what's your greatest negotiation that you've ever been a part of across all the years? It could be bureau, it could be post bureau, it could be even something with a family member. A lot of my members said to me, I was on a coaching call this morning and I said, hey, I'm interviewing Chris Voss today. I've made you all read the book. You know how much I respect and love this guy. And they said, oh, ask him, what's his greatest ever negotiation? If there was one negotiation that was up there beyond any of the others, what would it be and why? We'd love to know that.
Yeah, well, a couple in a row. First of all, and it came as one of the worst disasters I was ever involved in. Burnham Cerbero case in the Philippines. We talk about the documentary Tactical Empathy, which is on Amazon, which is, it's if you want to dig into the history, watching that doc on Amazon. But so there were a bunch of issues. Couldn't get the hostages on the phone. Didn't know how. Somebody got them on the phone while we're in the middle of it, which I was like, how the hell did they do that? How does, and who were they? And so in searching for that answer, I'm listening to kidnapping in Pittsburgh. Drug dealer's girlfriend gets grabbed by another drug dealer. Who do you go to when you're in real trouble? Even if you're Donald Trump, you go to the FBI. You want the FBI to solve your problems. Drug dealer's gone to the FBI. Negotiators in Pittsburgh are riding around a car with them. They don't know that the girlfriend's alive or dead. The drug dealer not knowing anybody, it just literally says on the phone, hey, dog, how do I know she's all right? The how question. What's the question that the other side can't deny is legitimate and it feels deferential. And it's a game changer in the moment.
Wow.
And there was a hesitation. And when the kidnapper, who'd previously been in charge, had the upper hand, come back on the phone, his voice has changed. And he goes I'll put her on the phone. And I'm like, that's how they did it. whoever did it in the Philippines asked a legit question. So I decided I'm going to change our strategy on proof of life. And, I decided with counsel from the other people in the crisis negotiation unit, I'm bouncing it off them. So I just don't, flip the switch. But I don't really tell the guys in the field, but I got my guys at CNU, the real brain trust at CNU crisis negotiation unit. They're like, yeah, I think this is it. I think you got it. So we go on, the next two kidnappings I work, neither of which ransom was paid. The first one in the Philippines, lone kidnapper, serial killer. The only lone kidnapper I'd ever heard of, let alone dealt with. We throw these how and what questions in deferential. We got a very coachable family member on the team who takes our coaching and then comes up with a couple of questions within that framework on his own, which totally throws the kidnapper off. Now, we don't know we got a murderer. We got a serial killer on the other end of the line. And through the how and what questions that we're coaching this guy on his own, he says to the kidnapper, when we run out of money, paying the daily amount of money you want us to pay to keep the hostage alive, when we run out, what's going to happen? And there's this long silence on the other end of the line. And the kidnapper that is a murderer says, it'll be all right. Now, my negotiators call me on the phone and go, this just happened. We think this is highly positive, but we're not sure what it means. And I start doing a dance at my table in DC. I'm like, he just promised he'll never hurt the hostage.
Yeah.
Like, we got this guy. At this point in time,
all
we got to do is run this out and stay with it. And we totally have this guy and he doesn't know it. Yeah. So then through the course of that case, the Philippine National Police developed some intel and they rescue the hostage. And that's how I know that the guy was a lone kidnapper and he was a serial killer, because they made him on a bunch of other cases.
Yeah.
So we created a new dynamic, which allows miracles to fall out of the sky.
Yeah. Wow.
And then, as it turns out, when you start doing this, these miracles start happening on a regular basis. If you just put in a great process that's designed around deference and empathy.
Yep. Love it. So let's fast forward to early next year. In January, my team and I were coming to Vegas with some of our absolute top one deal makers that we have in our group. And we're going to have the absolute pleasure of you and your team walking us through the Chris Voss super negotiation strategies. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. Like, what are we in score for? Like, what have we got to look forward to? It's going to be amazing.
Well, getting it in your bones.
Yeah.
Of literally these magic wand moments, these changes that you think are miraculous and astonishing, and then come to accept that you can make them happen on a regular basis.
Yeah.
We just did a thing in LA with one of my business partners, Nick Nanton. I did 24 interviews of people that learned how to create these miraculous moments, like how to get a that's right and why, and what is as important, what not to do. So the guy that takes me over there, he's in Vegas, and I get this email the day before. It's like, hey, I'm doing the interviews with you for the TV show. I'll fly you over my private plane. You want to go? And I'm like, yeah, I ain't turning that baby down.
Yeah.
And we sit down and we get there, and he says, you're the reason I can afford to fly private now wherever I go. And then when I do the interview, he tells me the story, how he got it in his bones, what to stop doing, and then what to do, which effectively culminates in a that's right moment. And it's relatively simple, and it's really difficult because it goes against everything he'd ever been taught.
Yeah.
And he started it at the beginning of the pandemic because he thought his practice was going to go broke. And now he's flying private.
Yeah.
So how do you learn what not to do?
Yeah.
And why to do something really counterintuitive so that your life has changed that much? You come up with these miracle moments on a regular basis.
Yeah, and they're in you then, and they're natural, and you don't need to think about it. It's almost like muscle memory negotiation, right? It's not, hey, I got to stop, I got to look at the book, I got to watch the masterclass. It's like, no, like absolutely get the stuff inside of us. So we're really, really excited about it. We can't wait. It's going to be a long time, well, 3-4 months before we got to wait, but it's going to be really, really cool. But Chris Voss, thank you so much for spending this amazing time. For everybody that wants to learn even more about you, is there a place they can go to check you out? Maybe a link to buy the book or something like that?
Well, what do you do as a warm up in the meantime? All right, so here's my ask. Watch the documentary Tactical Empathy on Amazon.
Got it.
Email us, info@blackswanltd.com.
Yep.
You email us, and we're going to give you the smallest amount of money you could imagine. We're going to give you a $50 credit on any of our live online training prior to January.
Great.
So you get a little bit of taste, you can get a little bit of a warm up. You get some of your reps in advance.
Got it.
You get to watch the documentary. The documentary costs you 99 cents to rent. Like the people that serve you, like $50 is nothing. So I don't know how to compensate you for your time in a way that's really effective. But we do want to get you ready for January. So watching the doc will give you some interesting background.
Right.
And then if you want, then there's some some of the live stuff online to get you ready, sort of get your mind right. Is cool. They used to say cool hand Luke.
Yeah.
And then in January we will be ready to rock.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure that we all do that. But Chris, thank you so much again for spending the time with us. We will see you in January. And guys, big treat today. I promised you I would dragoon Mr. Voss into coming and speaking to us all. So thank you very much, Chris. And we will see you in January.
I look forward to it, Carl. Thank you.